Okay, August 19th, Esther 4:1 through 7:10. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province where the king's command and decree arrived, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, wailing, many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her, and the queen was deeply distressed. And she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away from him, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called Hegai, one of the king's eunuchs, whom he had appointed to attend her, and she gave him a command concerning Mordecai, to learn of what and why this was. So Hanak went out to Mordecai in the city square that was in the front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasury to destroy the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the written decree for their destruction, which was given at Shushan, that he might show it to Esther and explain to her, and that he might command her to go to the king and make supplication to him and plead before him for her people. So Hadak returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke to Hadak and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has not been called, he has but one law, to put all to death except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go to the king for 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words. And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than any other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to this kingdom for such a time as this? I think we all need to remember that when God says it's time to stand and we need to stand, who knows if the situation you're in right now, if whether you come to that place for such a time as this. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go to gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan to fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. If we could only have that courage, right? So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther commanded him. Now it happened on the third day that Esther put away her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, facing the entrance of the house. So it was when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, what do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, up to half the kingdom. And Esther answered, if it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, bring Haman quickly, then that they may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared, and at the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom, it shall be done. And Esther answered and said, my petition request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said. And Haman went out that day joyful with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and And he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. And then Haman told them of great riches, the multitude of children, everything in which a king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above all the officials and the servants of the king. Moreover, Haman said, besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am invited by her along with the king. Yet this avails me nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. Then his wife Zeresh and all of his friends said to him, let the gallows be made 50 cubits high in the morning. Suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet. And this thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. That night the king could not sleep, so one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told Bithoth the Antereth, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers, who had sought to lay hands on the king Xerxes. And the king said, what honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this? The king's servants who attended him said, nothing has been done for him. So the king said, who is this? Who is in the court? Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest to the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he prepared for him. Then the king's servant said to him, Haman is there, standing in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king asked him, what shall be done for the man in whom the king delights to honor? And Haman thought in his heart, whom would the king delight to honor more than me? And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought out, which a king has worn, and a horse which a king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and the horse be delivered into the hand of the one of the king's most noble princesses, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Then the king said to Haman, hurry, take the robe and the horse just as you suggested, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Let nothing be undone of all that you have spoken. So Haman took the robe and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and led him on horseback to the city square, and proclaimed before him, thus shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Afterward, Mordecai went back to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning with his head covered. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and all of his friends everything that had happened to him, the wise men and his wife Xerxes said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him. While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs came and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. And on the second day of the banquet of wine, the king again said to Esther, what is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Up to half the kingdom, it shall be done. Then Queen Esther answered and said, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Had we been sold as male and female slaves, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy would never compensate for the king's loss. So King Xerxes answered and said to Queen Esther, who is he, and where is he? Who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing? And Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is the wicked Haman. And Haman was terrified before the king and queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman stood before Queen Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil was determined against him by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place where the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was, and the king said, will he also assault the queen while I am in the house? And the word left the king's mouth. They covered Haman's face. Now Nahaboth, one of the eunuchs, said to the king, look, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which they had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath was subsided. 1 Corinthians 12, 1 through 26. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles carried away to those dumb idols, however you were led. Therefore I made known to you that no one speaking by the Spirit of God calls Jesus accursed, and no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. There are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministry, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, and to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works in all things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. For the body is of one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and all have been made to drink into the one Spirit. For the fact that the body is not one member, but many. For if the foot says, for the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now but now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body, just as he pleased. As if they were all one member, where would the body be? Now indeed there were many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again can the head say to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather, these members of the body, which seem to be weaker, are necessary, and those members of the body, which we think to be less honorable, on those we bestow great honor, and our unpresentable parts have greater modesty, but our presentable parts have no need. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to the part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, and that the members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Psalms 36, 1 through 12. To the chief musician, the Psalm of David, the servant of the Lord. An oracle within my heart concerning the transgression of the wicked. There is no fear of God before his eyes, for he flatters himself in his own eyes. When he finds out his iniquity, and when he hates, the words of his mouth are wickedness and deceit. He has ceased to be wise and to do good. He devises wickedness on his bed and sets himself in the way that is not good. He does not abhor evil. Your mercy, O Lord, is in the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the great mountains. Your judgments are a great deep. O Lord, you preserve man and beast. How precious is your loving kindness, O God. Amen. Therefore, the children of men put their trust under the shadow of your wings. They are abundantly satisfied with the fullness of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your pleasures. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light. Oh, continue your loving kindness to those who know you, and your righteousness to the upright in heart. Let not the foot of pride come against me, and let not the hand of the wicked drive me away. There the workers of iniquity have fallen. They have been cast down and are not able to rise. Proverbs 21:21 through 22. He who follows righteousness and mercy finds life, righteousness, and honor. The wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the trusted stronghold. All right, see y'all tomorrow.